Hello, everybody. My name is Denny Janetti, and I kind of want to put my 2 cents into a topic that is pretty red hot in the mountain bike community right now, and that is the lack of available or perceived lack of availability of more advanced trail networks for people to ride. And I kind of agree with this, and at the same time too, I also want to take a more tactful approach to this instead of just saying, well, where are our trails? We need more trails. We need them. You know, part of understanding progression is understanding the opposite side of the argument. And I'm still relatively new to the mountain bike community, and I think maybe I see things a little bit differently than people, you know, who may be more entrenched for decades in this community, and it's a lovely community. But I think sometimes, just like anything in life, people could take a real hard stance one way or the other. And for me, I kind of want to point out some of the pitfalls as to, you know, how to push back and how to do it the right way, and kind of maybe shed some light on why things are the way they are, and kind of where, you know, how can we keep going forward. Mountain biking as a whole, you know, it's still a pretty new sport, all things considered. It's probably just as old as I am, you know, it's like 30-ish years old. You know, as we know it now, it's maybe only a decade old. And with progression, I think sometimes what people fail to realize is that our community that is so deeply entrenched in the sport that we love progresses faster than maybe the opinion or the understanding of the general public. And I think that's probably one of the bigger issues, because I think if you were to ask, you know, one of your friends who knows nothing about mountain biking, hey, you know, give me your thoughts on mountain biking, they'll probably tell you more, you know, like, oh, you know, go for a pedal in the woods, a couple trails, little ups and little downs, and, you know, maybe a jump or two. But they probably can't explain to you, you know, the difference between a downhill tech trail and what enduro is, and what you know, how big a table should be, and at what point does it become a black diamond trail. And I think that is something that we need to kind of work on, and I think we're going in the right direction. But, you know, that I think is the main struggle. Going along with that, I don't want to just feel like I'm screaming into the void here. We're saying, like, yes, we obviously need more progressive trails, but, like, why can't you understand that? Why doesn't the general public understand that? And I think it's maybe like I said, it's kind of understanding, you know, the opposition and where they're coming from. And it's not always, you know, it's not always a holistic approach from the other side. Some people just don't want mountain bikers out there, and I think that's okay. But at the same time too, I maybe don't think the public understands well enough. A lot of the studies that I looked, because I actually wanted to do some research for this instead of just sitting here gabbing and, you know, giving my opinion. If somebody sits here, I think a lot of people will cite, you know, from the other side, like, oh, we don't want this because environmental impacts. We don't want this because of nature impacts. We don't want that. And if anybody gives you a hard stance one way or the other, you should, and, you know, again, educate yourself. Don't just make a rash generalization that there really aren't studies on this. There are, but there aren't many. And any study you find, and I'll link, you know, one or two I've seen below, there aren't really any conclusive studies. I think when it comes down to it, we also, on the other side, as mountain bikers, have to accept the fact that when we do ride, we are going to leave an imprint on the landscape and nature. I don't think it's fair to, as us as a community, to say, yeah, no, it doesn't do that much damage. It doesn't. Well, it does. I mean, to what extent is not very much known, but when you build a pretty advanced trail network and you're bringing in big equipment and you're bringing in, you know, big backhoes and diggers to make, all these things, that does leave an impact. And I think people need to understand that and also say, okay, how can we minimize that? Is there a better way? Is there a better this? Is there a better that? Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. I don't know. But understanding both sides of this argument is kind of important to me. And on the other side, I would push back on the people that say, oh, the environmental impact is terrible. Well, a lot of the studies are not done on really aggressive riding. Everything that you've seen is kind of on more XC things, but at the same time too, the studies, the little limited data that I have seen is hiking and XC kind of mountain biking kind of has the same impact. I'm assuming, and this is just my opinion, that downhill and enduro is going to have more of an impact. And I understand that. And at the same time too, I think having dedicated trails for those things will minimize that, as opposed to, people going off into the woods and starting to dig their own trails and do it unsafely and go off trail. And is there gatekeeping in nature? Absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. I know this isn't maybe an 8-to-8 comparison, but I recently had my local bike park, Wyndham Bike Park, taken away by, a rich billionaire, Manhattan, that decided he wanted a ski resort essentially for him and his buddies. And it's tough. And, they've sort of pushed out the general public, and that's even just behind a paywall. And there's plenty of trails in the area that are just for hiking, but they also allow equestrian and horses, which also damage the environment. And I think both sides need to accept the fact that this does have an impact. And to kind of morally grandstand on, mountain bikes are the worst one, or horses are the worst one, well, hikers actually do the most, is kind of annoying. And I'm going to put it here. And if you watch this Reddit comment is amazing. I was doing my research, and it's an older comment. When people bring up the fact that, mountain biking has such an environmental impact, but it's like, okay, well, what about that home that somebody just built in the mountains? Or what about that road that goes through that forest? Nobody bats an eye at that. And that sort of is telling. I think having specialized mountain bike trails is important, and it is progressive, and it is important for progression. I also think that mountain biking now is maybe more specialized than people think it is, where I've never done an XC ride. I've never done it. But somebody who might be listening to this might love that, and that might be what they want out of mountain biking. But it's not for me. But I also understand, and I want you to have a place in this sandbox too. I have my e-bike. I love my e-bike, but some people might not want an e-bike. Some people might not want that. But I want a place in the sandbox too. And I think some people just want maybe an up and down kind of trail enduro-y ride. I don't want that. I'd like a kind of up and, straight downhill ride, sustained downhill. But some people might not want that. But I'd also like them to want me to understand that. There's a study I saw, I have, and I will link that in the description, is that mountain biking has become so specialized. I mean, you think there's enduro, there's XC, there's now, I know it's not mountain biking, but gravel bike, which is something that probably was even closer to XC, which is even more specialized now. You have downhill, you have enduro, things, you have bike packing, you have so many sects of this. And I think that we as a community need to understand that it is a bit niche, and it's a niche of a niche. And from there, we can go from there. If the public wants it, we should be able to petition for it. And I think educating, the local communities and local people around to say, hey, listen, this is something that we want. This is something we need. But at the end of the day, and this is probably the most frustrating thing is, and this is coming from somebody who works for the state, getting places to spend money is tough. And that is the hardest part of this. There is so much money that goes into trail maintenance, that goes into building trail networks. I mean, in Caroga Lake at the Wheelerville Bike Park, which is beautiful. It was millions of dollars, and that community decided that that is what they want. But not every community is going to do that. Not every community is going to want that. And that is the hard part. And that's why volunteering and donating to these trail networks is so, so important. I cannot stress that enough. I donate. I don't go out and I don't do volunteer work, and I should. And I'm not going to sit here, and I am part of the problem. I'm just going to say that. I'm not going to sit here and morally grandstand. I'm just giving my opinion and kind of trying to educate on, hey, here's some other sides of the argument so you can combat this. I think understanding the opposite side of your argument is important, and hopefully I've shed some light on, some of the counter arguments to our arguments. And listen, I love downhill mountain biking. I love riding the bike park, but I understand that it is tough to get accessible, really accessible trails. And that is the beauty and the struggle and the frustration of progression. The way these trail networks are being built are similar to your own riding style. You didn't start out by just crushing a downhill, hitting, 10 foot, 15 foot, however many foot gaps. You started out riding at the local XC parks, most likely, or you started out riding the green trails at the bike park, and then you kept working at it and you kept doing it. And that's where I think we are now. I think we're at a crux. And it is okay to be frustrated. Like, sometimes I get frustrated too. But at the same time, it's also okay to understand the other side of the argument. There are places that I ride that have a lot of hikers. There's a lot of places that have people that, just go out for a day with their kids and, maybe have like a picnic or something outside. And that's what they want out of nature too. As long as I'm respectful to them, I would expect the same from them. Don't go to these places, and if you come across somebody on a trail, don't be rude to them, and don't, this is a downhill section. No, listen, just say, hey, listen, I'm so sorry. Hey, just look at a lot of people come down this trail, and maybe point them to another trail that is not as trafficked by bike trails. And maybe it's not just a bike trail, and maybe you also have to be cognizant of the fact that, hey, somebody might be walking up this trail, and I got to look out for it. But that's okay. With time, I do believe these trail networks will come. It might not be as fast as you want, but your bike riding progression might not be as fast as you want. I've been stuck on the same tabletop at Mountain Creek on the Trail Tempest for the longest time. And I will get it eventually. It might not be as fast as I want, but I will get it. So all I can say in conclusion, and I would love to hear what everyone has to say. If anybody watches this video, put it in the comments below. We'll have a discussion. I would love to hear that. Is keep pushing, keep advocating, keep donating, keep volunteering, keep doing things like that. That is what's going to get it done. And I really hope more than anything through this video, people got out of it is that, there is another side to this. And most of the time, it is just somebody else trying to enjoy their hobby like you do. As always, thank you for watching. Go out and ride something.